And I want to actually differentiate mindset from beliefs, because mindset is an attitude, and beliefs are, when I say beliefs, it's like they could be conscious beliefs, like I believe I can do this versus I believe I can't do this, right? And obviously where your attention goes, your energy flows. So if we believe we can't do it, then all of a sudden it activates that path of I can't do this. And then people go into self-sabotaging behaviors. Yeah. So beliefs sometimes are subconscious. And so mindset is typically very conscious. It's conscious attitude. You're moving towards something. It's moving towards your vision. And then poke. Okay, what's going on? I'm hitting a wall. There's an obstacle. There's a bump. And typically, we need to explore deep inside what that is.
Hey, welcome back, friends, to the Flourish podcast. I'm so excited as you join us for another episode to have again our friend, business partner, one of our amazing facilitators and coaches, Rosalind Fung here. And welcome. How are you?
I'm great.
Good.
I'm glad to be back.
Good. And listen, if you missed our last episode, please tune in, because there Rosalind tells us all about her story of transitioning from, a psychologist into full-time coaching, but also got very real and raw about her own journey of self-love and what that meant in a very practical way. So please tune in for that.
Yes.
So welcome back. How's it been since I last saw you here so very long ago?
It's been awesome.
It's been good. Okay. And so today, I really wanted to focus, Rosalind, on, you do so much work, and I think that's one of the reasons you're effective. The idea today of being 2024, 2025 is it's not so much about the time you put in, but I think it's the value that you bring. You can put in an hour and really not help anybody, and yet you could put in 15 minutes and change somebody's life.
Absolutely.
And I think you do that because you have so many tools and so many ways of approaching things. And, at Flourishing Workplace, we do a lot of work with organizations. And so when we say organizations, we're talking from for-profit to nonprofit, to tons of First Nations, to government. And if you're not familiar with this term First Nations, what that means here in Canada is our Indigenous peoples. And they have experienced historical trauma and marginalization, and yet they are very, very interested in growing and developing. And so we support many, many dozens of those First Nations right across Canada do that. And Rosalind is a huge part of all of that. And so, we talk about flourishing workplaces, and have you ever been a part of a workplace or a team that is really, really not flourishing, maybe even toxic? And tell us about that.
So the teams that have hired me, typically there's a lot of mindset blocks. Right. So, for example, I'll talk about the insurance teams that I work with.
Sure.
So I work very closely, typically with the leader, very intimately, to teach them how to and coach them how to lead. Okay. Really shifting their mindset, helping them have a flourishing mindset, and an expansive mindset, a growth mindset, and really serving their people, coming with service to serve their team, to help their team shift their mindset.
Right.
And shift the way they're thinking about marketing, about sales, about working together. Yeah. Even about, Abe, what I find is a lot of teams do not celebrate.
Yeah.
They do not celebrate.
Yeah.
Their own, not even each other. It's like they don't celebrate their own wins. Okay. And so that is actually something that I love to immediately implement. So that's a very practical tip.
Nice. Yeah. Celebrate yourself, your wins.
Where a lot of times I find even my own leadership clients, they struggle with celebrating their own wins. And so we start there, because the leader must embody in this case, that energy of celebration, because if they don't, it's going to be really hard to have others also celebrate themselves on the teams and then celebrate each other. I think it is easier to celebrate each other because it's not then about us. It seems like for a lot of times it can be bragging, right?
Right. Yeah. We don't do that.
Celebration is very different. It's about wow. And it's not waiting to celebrate the end result. It's celebrating the journey, the little steps along the way. And I always say celebrating wins could be, you might not tangibly see on the outside yet, but you've shifted a belief.
Yes.
From something that held you back to something that actually is now opening up more possibilities for you to move into and expand your leadership, expand your team, expand your business, close those sales.
Yeah. So you don't have to wait until you get the multi-million-dollar contract to celebrate.
No.
Celebrate the small things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we talk about mindsets in the workplace, and I heard you say a mindset maybe of celebration, a mindset of service, like coming to support your team.
Yes.
What other mindsets would you say can really help in the job, in the workplace?
And I want to actually differentiate mindset from beliefs because mindset is an attitude.
Okay.
And beliefs are, when I say beliefs, it's like they could be conscious beliefs, like I believe I can do this versus I believe I can't do this. Right. And obviously where your attention goes, your energy flows. So if we believe we can't do it, then all of a sudden it activates that path of I can't do this. And then people go into self-sabotaging behaviors. Yeah. So beliefs sometimes are subconscious.
Okay.
And so mindset is typically very conscious. It's conscious attitude. You're moving towards something. It's moving towards your vision. And then poke. Okay, what's going on? I'm hitting a wall. There's an obstacle. There's a bump. Mm-hmm. And typically, we need to explore deep inside what that is. Okay. So let me see if I can think of an example with a client. Okay, let's talk about capacity, because I think a lot of times, and the audience may relate with this, we have a capacity issue, meaning we feel like we don't have enough time, don't have enough energy to do all the things we have to do.
Right.
But then when I actually unpack it with my clients, some of those beliefs are they feel responsible to have to do everything. Or they think that no one else can do that job as well as they can. Right. Which it's like, maybe that's true, but you can't, you're only one person and you shouldn't be doing it all. Yeah. And they have a tough time letting go of control. Yeah. And so we need to work on what that control, like that belief around needing to have so much control that is actually, when your strengths are turned up too loud, they become weaknesses. Yes. So it's becoming detrimental to your mental health, your physical health, you're tired, your energy.
People around you too. Right?
Yeah. And then you might be unconsciously projecting onto other people because you're stressed. Whether it's your family members, you're not giving them enough time and presence because you don't have the capacity, because a lot of times that's what happens, right?
Absolutely.
We keep it all together at work, but then when we come home, we are just not the nicest person, or we're just too tired, or, and we just can't deal with things in the same way versus when we have full capacity.
Right.
And so when I work with my clients, that sense of control, we look at what is that really about? And that's where I use the Haikomi method I had talked about in the first episode, where I'm working with subconscious beliefs to shift the client immediately so that they can feel safe to delegate, feel safe to let go of control. And there's a real difference between, because yes, it's important to be in control, but there's a dial there, right? Mm-hmm. And so it doesn't need to be turned on so loud that we're like white knuckling things. Yeah. And so being able to just be like, letting go to a place where it's like, I can breathe, I can have capacity, and I can delegate with ease.
And it's difficult, right? Because we really are in a time of massive societal transformation. Yes. And then economically, and funding and inflation and cost and profit, and you bring all of that into the workplace. And stress. We say, it's a toxic environment, but what if it's just a bunch of people who are afraid and self-sabotaging and insecure, and it doesn't make them evil, but we do need sometimes a process, a coach, a facilitator, somebody who can come along and say, hey, let's support you all to develop that mindset. Maybe shift those beliefs,
and that is key. Foundation is us, that the leader supports the team members, and the team members feel seen and heard, validated in their feelings, and that creates psychological safety.
Yeah, and it's almost like in COVID, like you started seeing that, where leaders were told, okay, check in on your team. How are they doing? And then COVID happened and COVID went. And now it's like we're almost back to those same realities from before.
Yeah.
But even a bit worse because COVID took the social connections down.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And then the hybrid model. So there's not everybody is in person
anymore.
All the time. And sometimes they're only in the office 1 or 2 times a week. And so it's finding ways to stay connected as a group and be cohesive, be in flow. And it starts with psychological safety. It starts with building those relationships collegially so that people feel that they care about each other. And specifically that management, leadership cares about them. Because if that's not the tone that management leadership is setting, nobody feels safe. Nobody feels safe.
No, and you know, like, and so what would you say in a workplace creates that psychological safety? What are some of the things? I mean, you talked about care, which totally makes sense from the leader to the team. Are there any other things that will help?
Yes. And I want to emphasize on the care. It's the leader's job is to ensure that they're taking care of their team members. Not the customers. Because if the team members feel seen and safe, they feel like they're belong, it's safe for them to express their ideas, they're honored, they're going to want to stay in that workplace.
Absolutely.
They're going to want to stay. And so, because high turnover is an issue.
It's a huge issue.
Right? And so helping these team members feel cared for, feel seen, validated, celebrated. But also having an open door policy where it's like, hey, if you have any concerns, come and talk to me.
Absolutely.
Come and talk to me. No matter what, we will figure it out together. No matter what, we will figure it out together. And I find that a lot of workplaces don't have that. They really struggle with that because as soon as ideas are shared, they can get shut down. They can get gaslighted, right? Meaning, it doesn't matter. Maybe it's blamed, and so it doesn't feel safe for them to actually open up. So that sense of feeling safe to know that I can share this, something's going to be done about it, it's going to be taken care of, it's going to be looked at, and it's confidential. Right? That's really important.
No, and I mean, when we have that kind of environment, I mean, what's really interesting about it is that it actually drives the business outcomes we're looking for. Right?
1,000%. And then a very important concept that's even changed my own life personally and professionally is accountability. Taking personal responsibility. I'm very passionate about that. And
so it's not everybody else's fault?
Maybe sometimes.
Because that works really well for me, actually.
That's being a victim.
That's right. Isn't that what we all are?
So the victim mentality is believing that you're blaming yourself or other people. It's your fault or other people's fault. Taking accountability, and there's 3 different levels of accountability. And so it means that when you look at situations, you're asking yourself, how am I a part of this? How am I co-creating this? Right? And particularly, and for all things, desired situations and undesired situations, that's even harder to look at. It's like, how am I playing a part in this? Because life is happening for me and through me. Life is happening for me and through me. So that's about taking radical accountability. So when something's not working for you, you're in an undesired circumstance. What I do is I always go, okay, let's take a step back. There's a co-creation here of all the parties involved. How am I co-creating this? And sometimes it's more energetics. So I'll share an example about myself, actually. So when I was running an academy, I noticed that I would have team meetings with my coaches who were supporting my clients. And they were sharing that sometimes it feels like the group is on an island. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I realized that my own coaches and I weren't super connected.
Right.
They didn't know each other that well. And so they kind of felt like they were on an island. I'm like, oh, because everything mirrors. Right. So it had nothing to do with the clients and everything that had to do with how I was leading. So that was one of my biggest lessons is like, right, whatever happens on the outside, what we're doing behind the scenes, is going to energetically reflect back into the group.
Yes.
And so as soon as I got clarity around that, then I held tighter team meetings. I ensured that we built relationships behind the scenes with amongst us and the team. Key, right? And then things energetically shifted in the client group.
Yeah. It's interesting too, right? Because accountability is, especially when there's more than one human involved. Yeah. It's never just me or just you, right? Even in your marriage or a friendship, like if you begin the conversation with, I'm sorry, or I have spent time reflecting and recognize I need to make some changes. Yeah. And when you just that simple, right? You don't have to grovel. You don't have, hopefully you shouldn't have to, but it's really just taking accountability. I've found that kind of vulnerability sets the table for everyone else in the room to say, oh, okay, it's okay to own my stuff now.
1,000%.
I think that right now we're in a culture where it's very high stress and nobody wants to take accountability because they're all afraid that will mean assigning blame and maybe it's going to cause me to be punished or punitive action taken. And I do feel it's on the leader to always start with themselves and say, look, I'm sorry, or I've been reflecting. And, I found when you do that, you're not going to have all the knives pulled on you sometimes, I guess, but most of the time people are like, oh, that's what I was waiting for.
That creates psychological safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Right.
Yes.
But, part of psychological safety too, I think is then when we hear that, because what I have heard in organizations I've worked, and I don't like to use these terms too much because they're politically loaded like cancel culture, but people wonder, like even when I take accountability, is there an opportunity for the restoration of relationship? And how does forgiveness work? And I would be the first to admit that there's lines that we don't want to cross that you can't maybe come back from. Yes. But I think most of the time, I think we also in the workplace can learn a lot more about embracing people, maybe not physically, but at least mentally and emotionally when they do own it and saying, hey, there's a path back. We can figure this out together, right? Yes. It might be a missed sales target, right? It doesn't have to be something huge. It may be a branding strategy that really fizzled, right? It could be an approach that has not produced business results, but as a leader owning it, and then having a team that says, hey, we've got you, let's figure this out together. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what is the pain point that you're seeing most in some of the people or teams you're working with right now? Or one of the pain points. It's always hard to say.
I know. One. I'm like, just one. Yeah. I would say that it would be, honestly, like a lot of times the leader themselves. Right. Now, I'm not saying the leader is the pain point.
Right. Sometimes.
But if they're not embodying what we're talking about caring for their team, rather than seeing them just as a number and that they have a certain job to do and it's a task, that they actually care about how do I want to run this team so that they feel like family, a work family. Yeah. They feel like they want to be here. Yeah. They feel inspired to be here. They feel safe to be here. I find that many leaders don't actually have that mentality, or maybe leaders is maybe not the right word, business owners or people put into a leadership position, but they're not quite having the mindset of leadership that allows their team to feel cohesive and flowing and being productive and then creating those profits. Yes. Sure, maybe they're doing okay, like profit wise, but there could be that next level, because there's always another level.
Absolutely.
And what would that look like if they were to elevate themselves, which then would elevate their team? Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think you nailed it, right? Because in Flourishing Workplace, we really believe that when you create that environment, which has a lot to do with leadership presence.
Yeah.
You then build this environment that's positive, productive, and profitable, right? We all want to work in a place that's positive, but also that's productive. Nobody feels good about not being busy, right? We don't want to be too busy, but there's something about activity that fuels all the brain science that allows us to have dopamine and those endorphins flowing. But then, theoretically, if we're running an organization, be it for-profit or not-profit, that there's a profitability or sustainability element to that. And so, that's kind of what we do at Flourishing Workplace. So thanks so much, Rosalind, for checking in here today. Any final thoughts for the audience about creating healthy workplaces, workplace culture?
Yeah, I hope that you have takeaways from this, and then take that inspired aligned action to start moving into place with how can I care more about my people? How can I show that I care more about them?
Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting because my journey in this area started because I got into the business world and I saw in the middle of a business that I was asked to run that was doing about $60 million in sales, and I had about 200 employees in the midst of an economy that was cratering. Where the owner was declining to spend, it was a declining spend on marketing and branding. But because of effective workplace psychological safety and care, all the sales and the profit and even the loss prevention numbers went in the right direction. And there was only one thing that changed, and that was the insertion of a leader who knew what they were doing, who could care for people, who could create that psychological safety. And from that, I began to see, oh, wow, we can do this stuff that also improves people's lives, makes it better, healthier, more fun, but also enhances the bottom line. So please do check out flourishingworkplace.com. And definitely, we would love to connect with you. And we're going to be seeing Rosalind for sure in some future episodes. So thanks so much, Rosalind, for being here today.
Thanks, Abe.